Morning, everybody. Good to be back. Good to see you here. Oh, hang on one second. I just realized let me change what project is here. There we go. Morning, Chris. Morning, Robert. Morning, Nick. Good to see everybody. Forgive me for skipping last week. I had a couple things I had to take care of, and I just didn't want to lose the time. Streaming is a lot of fun, but it does slow me down quite a bit. So I had a few orders I just kind of wanted to wrap up. So I decided to forgo the stream last Monday and simply forgot to tell everybody that. So sorry about that. But today I'm going to attempt something potentially foolhardy. I don't normally do this kind of thing on stream, but I figured, you know what, I've been looking for something new and interesting to do on the stream that I don't think I've done too much of before live. So I figured, what the hell, we'll do it today. So I'll show you what we're going to work on here real quick. I have the template here. Let me move this keyboard out of the way. So I have a template here. This was a custom request from Trevor. And he's been waiting very patiently, over a month now, for me to get to it. So for those of you who've been waiting for your orders, thank you very much for your patience. Hello, Joe. Thank you. Thank you for the welcome back. What we have here, this is a kind of journal, notebook, travel wallet. It's almost a passport wallet, but the dimensions are just a teeny tiny bit different, but the construction is basically the same. So we have here, there's a slot here on the right for the journal, which looks like, from the photos he sent me, just is held by the back cover, so it doesn't have to carry the entire book in it, which is good. That saves us on dimensions. And then over here on the left side, we have a big slot for papers and things like that, then a card slot with two dividing stitches here on the left there. Then this, of course, is my negative template for doing the exterior here, but I'll show you what we're going to make this from here. Something unusual thing for me, in that this alligator skin was sent to me by Trevor, the customer, the person who commissioned this wallet. I normally don't use other people's alligator skins, but we went back and forth enough, and he was able to tell me enough about it and show me enough pictures to where I felt comfortable taking that on there. But still, there is anytime you're doing something with all alligator, there was always a great deal of risk involved, because we have to process these to where we can use them. And there's also, even just from the purpose of cutting it, there's always risk involved in doing that. I think we'll have a good day here today. Got my templates traced on here. I traced them on Saturday with some white gel pen, so that's pretty much on there. White gel pen is useful because it usually wipes off. This one here probably will not, because it sat on here for a little bit, but the advantage of tracing the outside edges, it all gets cut away anyway. So it's nice against this dark brown here because it's very visible, so we can easily see what we're working on here. But you can take a look, and you can see the basic arrangement of what I've done here with the scale pattern, or rather how this is going to go together. So we've got our back up here. So this will be one big piece. That'll be the wallet back. Out here, you can see we have the starboard side. This is the journal cover. Most of this will get covered up by the actual journal itself. This will be the piece for the cards, and this will be the piece that goes under it. Now, it's a little difficult to tell, but I've cut this about a 1/2 inch to 5/8 of an inch wider than it needs to be, so that when this is laying over top of it, it's not going to be laying here, it's actually going to be laying closer to here, so that when these are put together, you don't see the edge of this, it's obscured underneath it, and you have the continuation of these upward moving scales all together in more or less a line. And then, of course, this here will be the centerpiece, which again you can kind of see has been traced oversized by about 1/2 inch on either side, so these will be coming together a little narrower in here to cover it up, to make it look like, to give the impression accurately and correctly that these all came from the same part of the alligator. And that's a tricky thing to do in a lot of cases. Getting the scale pattern to align is probably the most difficult part of doing this, short of actually doing it, because there's a lot of material to work with on this. There's a lot of different places that you could conceivably choose for this. and you want to pick something that looks visually interesting and works well. Hi, hold on. Oh, I don't know if you can see him jump up there. I've put a bird feeder up right in front of that window, so the two cats are sitting there and having a great time. So, hello, Hilo. Good to see you. With that said, there's not a whole lot to do other than to do it, which is frightening. I won't lie to you. Every time I do one of these, and I've done quite a few of them by this point, it is terrifying every single time. Every time I cut alligator, it is frightening, because there is no going back. Once you cut it, you're committed to it. And then, as I said, this hide is not mine. It belongs to the customer, so I have to be very, very careful that I do everything right. Now, it's not quite as do or die as it would seem. I do have another one of these from my own collection, so if, God forbid, something were to go wrong, I can, in fact, make it up from my own alligator hide, which is the same color from the same tannery and distributor. This is a Heng Long, dark brown or chocolate brown. Let's see. This is a glazed dark brown hide from Heng Long, J. Harkey. This is a 40-centimeter hide, so this is a big alligator. In fact, I'm 5'2" for reference. I'll try to back up here. You can see. It is stem to stern. It is as tall as me. Hello, Oil Boss. It's Oil Boss, my wayward stream moderator and resident troll and griefer. God bless you. Thank you. I love this cardigan. This is a Uniqlo cardigan. I have two of them. I have one in this color I'm wearing right now, and I have my burgundy one. Today felt like a cream cardigan day, so that's what I'm wearing today. It's a nice crisp fall day. It's about 50 degrees outside. Beautiful day. We are actually having a fall this year. Last year, we just had summer that went right into winter, and that was no fun. We've actually got some nice, cool, pleasant fall weather. Delightful. Just truly delightful. Oh, I do have something to show you before I get started. Hang on. This is it. This is it. I think I worked on... I may have streamed the making of this. I think I did this on Instagram, actually, which is something I've been messing with. I've been starting to stream a little bit on Instagram Live as well. But this is a dark taupe chev, 8-slot bifold, using what might be the prettiest alligator hide I've ever had. This is a brown Testimoro, almost the exact same color as this one, but in matte from Amtan. But just truly a once-in-a-lifetime alligator hide. It is just magnificent. And this camera doesn't show the true majesty of it. I have not had a chance to take pictures of it yet, but hopefully later today or maybe tomorrow I will. But just absolutely gorgeous. I actually ran out of material in the middle of making this one. This is the A-Toupe or dark taupe chev, and I called Rocky Mountain Leather, and they very kindly shipped me some more on a very, very short time frame. So thank you to them for getting that taken care of there. What a beautiful piece of alligator. When it broke my heart to cut it, but that's what it's for. So I do too. The Testimoro from Amtan, if you have a chance to get some, I strongly recommend that you do, because it's a very unique color in that it's almost something of a chimera. It'll go from like a dusty, dark, gray brown to, in sunlight, very warm, almost chocolatey brown. And just from shifting the light, it'll do that. It will shift color on you. So if you have not tried it, I recommend it. Brown tends to get the short end of the stick. People kind of look at brown and think, it's boring, but it's actually one of my favorite colors to work with. So if you have a chance, I strongly recommend you do that. Anything else to show? I don't think I've got anything else exciting to show off here. Hello, Leon. I do not share my patterns. I encourage you to make your own, but there's nothing particularly difficult about what I make, especially with this one here. So this is it's actually a very, very simple piece to do, which is part of why I agreed to do it. But it will still be somewhat dicey. So before I do anything else, before I actually cut anything, I'm going to take my template and I'm going to double check and make sure that I like everything that I have here, that I have not done anything dumb and mistraced or misplaced something here. So we're going to go through the motions and double check myself before I wreck myself. So again, here's what's going to be the back. This here will be the exterior of the wallet. And I actually realize I do need to trace this a little bit wider than it is here, because when it folds around the 90 degrees, it's going to get pinched a little bit. But a better way of doing that is using the negative cutout template and seeing what that's going to look like. And that's going to be pretty. We're going to have that nice, the central scale pattern going right down the spine of that. So that's going to be pretty. So here, there's the hard slots. Got about, again, like I said, about 1/2 inch to 5/8 of an inch going underneath that. So that will fit like that. Here on the right side, and then we have in the center this strip here. Now I'm not 100% sold on using this part on the fold, mostly because this is glazed alligator. Those of you who work with it know that it tends to wrinkle and crinkle a bit when it folds. Now there are ways we can work around that, and I think we'll be okay with that. I certainly want to try, because I think it will look very, very fetching with this contiguous scale pattern going on. But in lieu of that, we may end up using a different part of that. Maybe this piece of sacrum down here. I don't know yet. We'll figure that one out. We'll have to just kind of see how that looks when it folds. If I can get it split thin enough to where it's not gonna. What the? Hey! Unbelievable. Incredible. May have to lock them out. Hello! Hello, Tora. Thank you for coming in. Yes, this will be full alligator interior. So this will be, like I said, this is somewhat foolhardy of me to choose to do this live. Really, young man. I think I might have to lock the cats out. Here. Come on. What is, you're going to hurt yourself. That little leg of yours. You need to settle down. You need to be careful. You can't be doing that. You can't be doing all that. You can't be running around all limbly bimbly. Cat bad. Cat very bad. No. See that bird? You gonna get that bird? I'm gonna give him one more chance. Actually, you know what? No, I better not. I know better. Come on, you've had your chance. No bird from this window. I don't know. No, don't. So bad. The audacity of him. Alright. Leon, I usually use the Junlin or Ellen Valentine Leatherwork School pricking irons, 3mm distance or 9 stitches per inch. Thread size, you generally use a Venimo number 8 MBT, which I think is just shy of 1/2 millimeter thickness, 0.45 I think it is. But that's what I use for most of this. The Junlin irons, they're pretty much interchangeable with the Kevin Lee or KS blade of the same size there, so. It's unusual for him, for Sparrow, to be so in my face. Normally it's his bigger brother, but he must be asleep somewhere. They do really like the bird feeder, though. And the sparrows are especially active right now, trying to fatten up before wintertime. So, alright, I think I've established to my own satisfaction that the size of this should be good. I think this will be okay. It's gonna be pretty narrow down here. I should have moved this down a little bit more. I think I should have probably had a little more space down here, because I'm going to have very, very little room to leave any trim allowance down there. Wonder if I can see if I can maybe move that down a hair. very, very careful I can, but I don't think I'm going to bother with it. You don't want to use too much. I basically have a damp paper towel here. You don't want to use too much moisture on glazed because you'll start to remove the finish from it. Now, to some degree, that can all be polished back, but I think I'm just going to leave it where it's at rather than try to mess around with it too much. We're gonna play it where it lies, I think. So, the first step to doing this is going to be very fun. Basically, we're going to cut the hide in half right down the middle, just to make it a little easier to work with here. Yep. Let's do it. And I've put a new fresh blade in here. This is still going to be a little difficult to cut just because this is very dense. Glazed finish is actually a burnished finish. So what that means is when they rub the agate stone over it to polish this, the fibers get very dense and compressed. So they're very rough on knife blades to go through them. Let me see here. I forgot to ask, how is the stream quality? I dropped the frames per second and I increased the resolution and dropped the bit rate a little bit. Let me know if that looks okay still. I think it should be fine. Probably hard to notice any difference with it there. I'm still planning on upping to a 2K or 4K overhead camera, but that'll probably be towards the end of the year. You know what I think we'll do? I think we'll start up here instead. I think we'll cut from the top first. Let's take a look here. Oop. Gonna get my straight edge out. Now when you're cutting up here, you have to kind of be careful because the alligator doesn't lay flat. So you have to make sure that the line you're cutting actually is straight before you cut it. Take that up there. Okay, good. I'm glad it's holding up. Okay. Up there, put that aside. We're not going to touch any of that. That all goes back to the rightful owner. If that were mine, I would save that and use it to make card wallets, things like that. Generally, when you're looking at alligator, people put most of their attention on the belly and things like that. But the neck and tail are very, very useful and still very pretty in most of them, especially this one. So if you have alligator and you're unsure of what to do with it or unsure of how to use it, don't rule out those quote-unquote undesirable or less than desirable parts of it because they're very useful and they're still very expensive. So don't be so keen to get rid of them without making good use of them first. Trying to leave myself about 1/16 of an inch of extra cutoff space here, which is again is very narrow because I have to kind of work in between that line and this line here. They get very close, and that's part of the difficulty with doing this is when you're trying to fit everything in one spot. I don't want to go too low because I don't really want to get into these smaller scales down here. I could if I had to, but I kind of don't want to. I think it looks nicer with the larger scales there. So you're rather space limited, especially with something as large as this. There's a lot of space needed for this, so there's a bit of a Jengaing around to try to find how to make all of that fit. I think that's gonna do it there. Even with a brand new fresh knife, there's still sometimes things to get through there. That's a good question, Kermani. Generally, I do not take customers' hides. This is actually one of the first time, I think it might actually be only the second time I've done it. Generally, I have the hide, and I retain all the scraps. I usually don't let people send me material just because no disrespect, I generally don't trust customers to know what they're talking about. This gentleman did, so I was able to establish pretty early on that yep, he knew what he was talking about. He knew what he had, and he knew that it was going to work. So I was happy to take it. But generally, I find that most people don't have the requisite understanding of what they're doing with what they have. So I usually decline that kind of thing. Funny enough, I find that in most cases, most of the people offering leather are offering me alligator leather, either the things that they shot and killed and had tanned or things like that. So it's kind of funny that it's usually exotics. Now we're going to hold on to these flank pieces. We're actually going to use these, at least one of them, because we have to split this. We have to split this alligator thinner to make it have any hope of working together as an interior. We don't want to practice our splitting on the pieces we're going to use. We want to practice on something else. So we're going to use these flank pieces, at least, like I said, probably at least one of them, to test the settings on our bell skiver so that when we do split them, we know they're going to work properly. Then, of course, whatever is left over all goes back to them. Even the pieces that are split will go back to them, just because those can all still be used for something else. But we are gonna test them out. So there's our wallet back, and I've given myself pretty generous dimensions here. It's going to be a little awkward getting that glued down flat, but it will glue down eventually. I'm going to put this aside just because I'm not going to need that for a hot minute. Hey, thank you for the subscription. And I guess I might as well get this out of the way. If you enjoy the streams, if you learn something, please do take a minute to hit the like button. I'm told that helps with the algorithm. I have no idea if it does or not. Who knows? I don't even know what to say anymore about it. At this point, I do the streams more for my own enjoyment than anything else, so I'm not really here to make a buck from it. I find it fun for me to get to talk about what I'm doing, and occasionally, I oddly enough, on days when I find myself relatively unmotivated, I find that turning the camera on and broadcasting either to friends or colleagues usually helps me get the motivation restored. Just something about the teaching, I guess, helps. Now we're looking good there. Okay. All of this can get wrapped back up. As much as I would love to make some other things out of this, not mine to do with. Try not to wrap my jogging pants pull strings up in there. So we're going to take, let's see here, we're going to take a piece of, think something about this. You don't need a whole lot. Let me get my thermometer around here. Let's see how thick this actually is. I like to use the flank because generally it comes from the same area as you're working in, so it's going to have a very similar thickness and a very similar density. The density varies through the hide, so you kind of want to test on something that's going to be about the same as what you're working with. So this here is about 0.8 millimeter. If we were just doing a single layer of construction, that would be perfect, but with alligator, I don't like to do that because, I mean, let's face it, the back side of that is not particularly appealing. We want to have something nicer. We want to line this with something. And to do that without it getting excessively thick, we just want to scrape off the back a little bit. If this were my own alligator hide, I'd probably try to go pretty thin to around 0.4 or 0.5. I think I'm going to try to just kind of keep it around 0.6 and just clean off the roughness, clean off some of the low spots from the scales there, and call it a day with that and glue a thinner liner on it. Just because anytime you're running something over a knife, there's great risk with it. So I'm going to switch over to the Skyver camera here. And hopefully you can still hear me here. So I've already been testing it a little bit on some of the flank pieces that Testamoro. You can kind of see That works there. But I think I have the bell skiver dialed in pretty much where it needs to be. Let's give it a try. It might be a little hard to spot there. Let's go back to the main camera. You can just barely make it. Yes, there you can see. Here's the part that got skived thinner. Here's the original thickness. Let's see how far did we bring it down to. Size there. Around 0.6. I'm going to run it through again a couple more times, even it out some. Let's see there. Down. We took down about 0.6 all around. I think we could probably come a little bit thinner. And again, I think if this were my own hide, I probably would try to go a little bit thinner than that, but I'm not gonna risk it too much more with that. I think we're gonna call it a day with that, and we'll make up the difference of the extra thickness here with a thinner liner on the other side. Something that you'll never actually see. You will never ever see the liner that goes in here, but you will feel it when you put cards in or reach in to pull stuff out. So it's nice. It's a nice way to do it, and with some of these things, it's pretty important actually. Let's double check here. I think what we'll start with, I'll cut these in half. I'm going to start with the centerpiece, because I kind of know that's going to be dicey whether that will work at all or not. For the first couple passes, I'm going to practice on this piece. Something that I have about a 50-50 expectation of not using anyway. We're going to start on this piece, this center strip right here. It's relatively small. It's not super, it's not large. It should be a relatively easy split. We'll basically make a skive along the top, and then we can do 3 or 4 passes right down the center of it there, and that should be pretty good. This one will want to get a little bit thinner than the others, so I may dial it down some. Let's cut it and try it and see what it does. Knocked over my water. Okay. How thick is this? Let's see. This is fairly dense here. This actually is denser than the other ones. This one here is almost millimeter thick. So this one's a little thicker, a lot denser than what we had on the flank there. And that's actually not necessarily a bad thing. One advantage to the denseness of these hides is that when you're going to split it, they're actually a little easier to split. You run into more trouble when you get to these softer edges where there's room for it to move or get bound up and get squished under the oppressor foot, and you get a hole in it that way. Generally speaking, these denser ones are easier to split. Not always, but we're going to keep our fingers crossed. They are our prayers, and let's go do it and see how it turns out. Forgive the camera arrangement. I couldn't get a whole lot better over here. The cord on this is only so long, and I don't want to keep it too much in my work area just because it will complicate things for me. There's our first cut. Should be able to make that out there. We're going to make a starting cut, and we'll do 2 there. And then now with that gives us a place to feed it. You can hear the knife struggling a little bit as it cuts through that. Chip in there and see here. Knife is still pretty sharp. Do have a little bit. So here's the strip we just cut off. You can see that came right off that piece there. It doesn't look like that's very much, and it is indeed not a lot, but it adds up. Let's go ahead and do another one now. Before we go any further, I'm going to take a look at it, move it around in the light, and see if I'm leaving any marks on the hide, which I'm not. My presser foot is adjusted nicely. It's clean. It's good. Now there's a trick also to getting that to not leave any marks. You may be able to see it from the camera, but the presser foot there is actually wrapped in HDPE tape, and that keeps it from leaving any unsightly marks on the leather as it passes through there. All right, let's go back and measure this now. We took a bit off there. I think I'm going to run it through. I'm going to try it again. I'm going to dial it down a little bit more and run it through again. Now this second pass is probably only going to produce very marginal results at best. But the thinner we get this, the better this will wrap around that fold in the center. We got one more pass. Let me double check, make sure the blade is clean. Bit of stuff stuck in there. Blade still feels nice and sharp. Here's the only downside of these machines, that unless you do some very complicated stuff, rig up an extraction inside there, you have to reach up inside of the blade to clean it. Mine, for whatever reason, no matter how I set up the little guard in there, it always accumulates pieces in there. Oh, I forgot to, doggone, I forgot to. Why didn't you tell me I forgot to set the camera up? Well, anyway, we went back, I hit that again. So you remember I started about 0.9, almost just shy of a millimeter thick. My first pass brought us down to about 0.79. Let's see where we're at now. Second pass, that brought us down to 0.6. I'm going to call that successful. That's pretty, looking at that, that's pretty doggone thin. Let's hold it up next to original piece. Now this edge here is right next to where this was. You can see the difference there. Even on my camera setup, you can see how much we've brought that down. That's pretty good. And again, we didn't leave any marks on them. I'm going to rotate it through the light there, and you can see that our presser foot not leaving any scrapes, any scratches, things like that. And that again is because of excuse me. It's a special tape. I think it actually is UHMW tape. If anybody wants it, I'll be happy to put a link in the chat there. But it's very low friction, and it lets us just kind of glide underneath the presser foot without any trouble there. So that's a good start. That's pretty good. I like that. Let's go ahead. While the blade is still pretty fresh, actually, you know what we're going to do? We're going to sharpen the blade real quick, and then we're going to go on and we're going to attack this one here. So let's go back to the Skyver. I actually remembered to set the camera this time. We're going to go through, we're going to sharpen the blade real quick. I've talked about this a little bit in the Discord chat. sharpening this blade is not a lot different from sharpening any other blade. It has its own sharpener built into the machine, but what a lot of people don't know is that the position of that sharpener is adjustable. And the position of this blade is adjustable too. So I have mine pretty far forward, almost up to the presser foot, as close as I can get it. And that generally results in a more accurate, cleaner skive or split in this case. But when you do that, if you move this bell from where it's initially placed at the factory, you're going to move it to a different spot, a different engagement position with that sharpening stone. So if you don't put a line of marker on that and actually see where you're sharpening, you may not actually be sharpening the edge of the blade at all. You may be sharpening it back here and doing effectively nothing. So you want to always check and make sure that nothing stupid has happened, nothing is shifted, because these machines do vibrate. Things can shift, things can move. You want to make sure that whenever you're sharpening it, that you are actually engaging the front edge of the blade. So what we should see here, I'm going to try to move the camera if I can. Let's see if I can get it a little bit closer for you there. Hold tight. I don't know if that did you a whole lot better, but watch the front edge of this, and you'll see as the sharpening stone engages it, it'll go white as it cuts off, as it grinds away the marker. Now we can see we have basically the whole front edge of that blade is actually being engaged by the sharpener, which is exactly what we want. While I have this, I'm going to dial this back in. I'm going to dial the stone back into where it's just kissing the blade. Just barely engaging it. I'm going to take the other oil stone here and reach in and deburr the inside of the edge there. I'm going to kind of walk them off together. That should be pretty good. There we go. Now we're going to test that again. We're going to take another piece of that flank that we had, because we want to make sure that we've done this right, that we haven't chipped the blade or done anything dumb to it. We're going to test it again. That little piece there, and it feels good. It feels right. You'll know when the blade is sharp. Even on something dense like this, there should be zero resistance. It should just glide right through that like butter. Now, obviously, you're always going to encounter some resistance, but as you use it, you'll be able to tell the difference between this is resistance just from the machine straining to feed this through versus this is resistance from the blade not cutting and it's being forced over it. So you'll just kind of get a feel for that. Again, I think the best way to do this is probably going to be do a cut across the top and then several long strips down that way. Of course, you know what? Now that I think of it, I think I'm going to do it the other way. I think I'll have a safer chance of not screwing this up. If I do one long cut there and then several, I'll have to do more cuts, but each cut will be shorter. Less time on the blade on each spot. I think I'm going to do it that way. That's a good start. We've taken a little bit off the edge there. I'm of the opinion that I, for whatever reason, in my experience, I have found it safer to make more cuts, but less time on each cut. And I don't have a scientific explanation for why I feel that way. I just do. Now I'm running the blade slower. This is controlled by a foot pedal. I have it dialed down on the slowest setting already, but you can still run it even slower than that just by moderating the pressure on the foot. letting that go. And we're getting a nice clean cut on that. I run it slowly because I'm looking very carefully at this as it's cutting to see if there's anything popping up. Have I gone through anywhere? Even if you go through, you'd be surprised how much of that you can recover afterwards. So if you stop soon enough after you've made a hole, you'd be surprised how much can be salvaged if you don't mutilate it. I'm looking inside the bell there. I can see I've got a little bit of buildup, so I'm going to reach in again. Take some of this out. Just trying to make sure that I've got nothing potentially obstructing it. Feeling the edge of the blade. The blade is very sharp. I am blessed to have very tiny little hands. I can reach in there and do that without much worry. Poor Ben Geisler is not so lucky. Take this back to the main camera here. Here you can kind of see. Try to get the light out there. So you can see right here is the line where I've cut so far. Let's see how we're doing so far on this. 0.9, 0.7. So we're taking about 1/10 of a millimeter off. I don't think I'm going to go much less than that. I really just want to clean the back of this a little bit, reduce some of the height differences between these soft spots between the scales, so when I glue it down to something it has a nice flat appearance. I don't think I'm going to risk doing much more than that. Any questions about what I'm doing here, please do let me know. I know this is not the most exciting stuff, but it is certainly tense for me, so let's go back to it here. I figured this would be a good one to show on camera because it is a little frightening, which makes it interesting, but also not a lot of people seem to be willing or able to do this kind of work. So I thought it might be interesting to show how it's done. And I think many leather workers don't even have a lot of experience doing this kind of thing. Creeping down bit by bit. Patience is the name of the game with this. Now again, that's not running slow because it's fighting. It's running slow because I'm governing it. I'm keeping it slow. I'm watching it closely. We're getting a nice clean cut there. Another thing you'll note, for those of you who know about these machines, you'll notice that I do not have two motors on this. I'm running it almost bone stock with a single motor, a single servo motor. People make a big deal out of adding a second servo motor. Yes, it is nice. Do you need one? I think this is pretty much evidence that you don't need one. But if one showed up, I certainly wouldn't turn it down. But do you have to go out and immediately buy one? No. Blade still feels very sharp, which is promising. That's one thing you have to be continuously managing when you're doing this, is the sharpness of the blade. Because the only thing that will really keep you, the only way these machines work well without a second motor is to have a very, very sharp blade. You need a sharp blade no matter what your setup is to do this. And cutting something as dense as this will dull the blade very quickly. So you have to continuously keep tabs on this. This is not a fast process to do. There, looking good. We've almost got our first piece split. Eye on the prize. that should be it for this piece. There, so there's our first piece split. And this was actually probably going to be the most dangerous piece because it's the largest. So here we go. Here's the back of this piece all split, and you can kind of see these little light spots. Those are areas that were where there was a lot of pressure to where it cut a little deeper in there. Which basically what that means is we would have had those would have all been bumpy or rough spots on the back of it. Now we can glue this flat, and when we glue it, it's going to be very, very straight, very flat, and very, above all else, very easy to glue to the liner versus this. You can see just by laying them down how much nicer this one lays already, whereas this one here, this is just from the other side of this. So this is the only thing separating this piece from this piece is that centerpiece there. You can see how much curvature it has on the backside here. You can see, again, pretty indicatively, how much cleaner this backside is. So again, not something you would ever see, but something you would probably feel. And again, you working with it, you will feel it as you work with it to the liner. Let's see how thin we got this piece. So we'll measure the first one here. This is the unsplit piece. That's 0.94. That's about a millimeter, and we took it down to 0.79. Now again, that doesn't sound like a great change, but you compare these two pieces, the way they lay here, it's not as much the thickness as it is the way this works, the way this lays down nice and flat. So when you put this into a wallet, it's going to look right. I think I'm going to take a break here for about 5 minutes. Let's hit the head. I think I'm going to get a cup of mint tea. I've been talking myself through this, so I need a little bit of help for my throat here. Let's take 5. We'll come back, and then we're gonna do these pieces here. So give me 2-3 minutes here. Make a cup of tea. I'll be right back, and then we'll carry on with this. And actually, once we split these two pieces, we're done splitting. We don't have to do that anymore. So this is basically, we've got over half the wallet handled already. Once we do these parts, we can glue these to liners, trim them, paint the edges, and then we basically have the interior complete. They just need to be put together. So be back in a few minutes. Stick around. We'll see you here shortly. Okay. I think what we'll do, there is certainly a question to be asked, whether it makes sense to split this all in one piece or split them into, cut them separately and split them separately. I think I'll probably split them separately. I don't have a great explanation for that. I just feel in my gut that that is the right move. It is, it is definitely less to split at one time, but then I would have to do two separate splitting actions. I think we're gonna cut this and then split them separately. I think that's how we're gonna do it. I'm gonna double check my line here. To that, do I have much? I'm going to try and get this here. I want to actually try and get fairly close final dimension. So I'm going to retrace my line on here to have a nice crisp, clean one here. You can see, again, this is just a very basic white gel pen. Just the jelly roll. I got a pack of 6 for like $8. It is it leaves a very nice clean line. And again, while it's fresh, you can wipe it away with a damp towel. You don't want to do too much of that on Alligator, like I said earlier, but it is an option. So take that. I think I'm gonna try and cut this line here. So bear with me. I'm probably gonna cover this up with my head, but try to show as much as I can. Not bad. Speaking of the damp towel, oh, we've still got that fresh. Way. This really isn't going to matter. It's going to get covered up. But still, in the interest of being clean, wipe that away. Now we can split these two separately. Require a little bit of polishing. Feel. Steve, I was holding my breath too. Dwight, Robert, I'm glad that was all beneficial to you. Happy to teach somebody something useful. So we'll take this little guy first. We'll go do this. Check the blade again, make sure there's nothing obstructing it real quick before I do my last cut here. I think we'll be able to finish this skive. Yeah, we'll be able to do this piece, and then we're going to have to sharpen the blade again. There we go. Okay. aside. Need a new marker, it seems. That should be good enough. Should be good, but again, we're gonna do a test cut. Make sure that that's. Whoop. Well, where'd that go? In there somewhere. Ah. Ah. Now what happened there? Ran into a bone. That'll do it. It's still cutting pretty good. Get in there and feel the blade again. Might have to sharpen that again. Let's see here. I think I am going to sharpen it again. Sometimes you run into teeny tiny little bones on the outsides of the planks. In this case, I think that's exactly what happened. And it's probably fine, but just to be safe, I'm going to resharpen it. We got plenty of blade left. Look at the blade here. I think we're good. I think we're all right. Let's see here. Yeah, I think we're all right. All right. That little interlude out of the way. Do this one just like we did the other one. Actually, this one here, I think I am going to dial in a little bit more. Just a hair more. Easy to get tempted to just blitz through it at the very end there. I've only got one or two more cuts to do. Just gonna zip right through it. That's where you get hurt. There we go. I think that should do it. Let's head back to the main bench. Yeah, there we go. I like that. Now we can actually finally kind of start to see how this is going to look when put together here. So again, we've cut these parts from this piece. They're actually going to overlap one another a little bit. So how it's actually going to appear is going to be more... Let me try and get... It's going to be impossible for me to show you the... Nah, I don't think it's going to show up too well on the camera. There we go. Kind of like that. Kind of sort of like that is what we're going for. We want to keep the appearance of these scales moving together like that. There's a little bit of playing to be done with that yet, but we're pretty close. One thing I want to do before I get too much further into it, I'm going to put my mic away first. But before I get too much further into it, I'm going to take these pieces that I've run through the skiver. I'm going to give them a quick brush and polish, just to clean up any residual marks that might be on there. Now, this doesn't look like we've got very far, and arguably, in the grand scheme of things, not really, but when it comes to this kind of thing, going slowly and being patient and taking your time definitely pays dividends. You want to be very careful with this, because this kind of thing here is not the sort of thing where you just cut another piece. You know, you're kind of stuck with it. If you make a mistake or you do something wrong, that's it. You either live with it or you have another piece of alligator sitting around. Oh, Mike? Well, you're in luck because you didn't miss anything last week. I was not here. I decided to take a day off to catch up on some orders. So, just hitting this with a little bit of a Saffir Reptan first. Mike, I think you missed the harrowing part at least. I'm done splitting the alligator now, so. Now, one other reason for polishing this and using the Reptan on it is that also, because of the moisture in it, it will also lift the white gel pen marks too. I'm going to go back and hit it again with some polish, actual polish, not just the Reptan after this. Looking at these pieces here, and everything looks good. We didn't have any nicks or scrapes. We don't have any scratches from the presser foot. Everything actually looking 5x5. Reptan A, thank you for the sub. And again, for anybody who just came in, well, I hate to do it. If you have a chance, please do take a moment and like this video. That's all I'm going to ask for. I don't ask for anything other than that. I'm going to take some of the polish. This is the Vidal d'Or 1925. This is neutral, so it's clear. I use this on everything but suede and Pueblo, and use this stuff on. Works beautifully. You can either apply it with a brush or you can use a microfiber cloth like I'm using here. So this will be the first of several cleanings I do to this, just because with glazed, the whole point of it is the shine. So you want to keep it shiny and clean. while you're working, you sometimes get glue sitting around, at least I do. You want to continuously clean it, polish it. I kind of make myself do this as I go through. Well, with that, we've taken off the majority of our white lines, at least the ones that we don't want. Now, we're going to do a test alignment of all the pieces together and see how they look once I put away my polish. Okay. So we've got our middle fold, which we did manage to get quite thin, and it being on the being right on the center line there, I think we're going to be okay with the bend on that. Over here we've got the, let me see if I can get the camera to look better on. Realize we're not getting any of the, not showing any of the scales. We've got the pocket there. This will be the inside of the card pocket. That'll extend out here, and then this will be card slots top of it there. Hilo, I saw your question. I'll get to you in just a second. There we go, there. There you can kind of see, obviously there's still some playing to be done with that. We're not 100% set on that. But you can see that we've more or less done what we set out to do. We've taken these individual pieces, and when put together, they all look like they came from the same spot of the alligator, because they actually did. But the scales are pretty close to lining up. They're not 100% perfect, and they're never going to be 100% perfect, but that's pretty good. That's not too shabby, I would have to say. When it's all put together and stitched and all the edges are dressed and you get your crease and everything, that's going to look very pretty. That's going to look very nice. So I'm happy with that. That was a harrowing task to do. We're not out of the woods yet. We've still got to line these pieces, but that's, if anything was going to be a disaster, if anything was going to go horrendously wrong, it was going to be there. And it didn't. Everything went good. So that's a good sign. That's a good thing. Let me put this away. Hilo, a knife sheath. I don't have a whole lot of experience with them. I would say you've got a couple options. You can go the with acrylic Resolene. That is pretty water resistant, but not waterproof. There is no waterproofing leather. It just can't be done. You can only give it varying degrees of resistance. I have had good luck with Resolene. The other option would be to put a whole crap load of polish on it. That Medal d'Or that I just used, that polish I was using there, does impart some degree of water resistance. Not a lot, but some. So that'd be another option for you as well. I would say a person who would know much better than me would be Mr. Martin Carswell. Carswell Leather. He does a lot of knife sheaths, and he is a master at those. Very approachable guy. Very just a good dude. So if you have questions about it, he's happy to answer it. I would just reach out to him on Instagram and ask him. But that would be, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of different answers out of other people. It's probably going to be Resolene or some kind of polish, and that's basically your choice. Otherwise, using leathers that are naturally resistant. Some bridles with the waxes they put in them can resist, water to some degree, but that's about it. Thank you, Mike. That's very kind of you. The question now is, what do I want to back this with? Got a couple options. Could use some calf skin. Should be nice and dense. I have some nice, very thin, very soft goat skin. I think the calf skin. I think we're going to go with the calf skin for that. I think I want some of that density. Especially here, because this here is really just a veneer. The actual structure of this piece is going to be the liner, not this. So we'd have to have something fairly dense, fairly strong. Now, I realize as well, I probably should skive these edges some. I'm kind of fearful of doing that. I have it so nice. I'm going to try it. I think I'm going to try it. Let's go back to the... Hold on, I got to sneeze. Managed to mute the mic just in time. Alright. I think we're going to go back to the skiver. I'm going to adjust it a little bit to try to get... I have this as thin as I want it to be, but I know I'll kick myself if I don't at least try to get these edges smoothed down on these two pieces. On this inside edge, I want to at least skive down this part. Certainly the two edges here. Let's see if we can't get some mileage there. So I'm going to take one of the pieces I've already skived, or actually already split, because it's already the thickness I want it to be. I don't know if you can see it or not on there. Actually, you can. This little gauge here is something I made out of a paper clip. It's glued to the presser foot. I've got some very basic lines drawn on there with pen, and I use that as kind of a quick gauge to tell when I have it level or when I have it at a skive. Let's see how that looks. That's working. All right. I think that's safe to run that through. Yep. Wow, that got it down to absolutely paper thin. That's perfection. Let me take this back to the... Can't believe that. And see how thin, even compared to this, which we split, there's the skived edge. Because again, we want this, remember, this is going to be underneath all the pieces, so these rough edges need to disappear as much as possible. Same needs to be done for this part. Take this back. This here I'm just going to kind of freehand it. Try not to get too crazy with it. Perfect. That's going to do. That will answer. Here, I'll show you. When we look at this here, kind of see right there at that little spot right there. That's the risk in doing the splitting. We want to avoid that whenever we're splitting it. Now, on something like this, where this is the part that's skived and hidden under here, that just gets glued down, and when it's glued flat, you won't even know it's there. It all gets covered up. But obviously that would have been a problem if it was something, say, right here. That's tolerable on a skived, hidden edge. I'm not going to push my luck any further than I already have. We're going to call it at that, and we're going to start working on our liner here. Take a sip of tea after that. That's good. All right, bear with me for a moment. This will be kind of noisy as I drag this out. Underneath my desk, I have a large Sterilite bin where I store leathers that I don't use as frequently. But it's nice because it's there, it's under the bench, it's shaded, it's all covered up from the sunlight, so I could store stuff there more or less indefinitely. And that's generally where I keep my calf skin rolled up. Because I don't use it for everything, I use it infrequently, but I do use it, and it's still reasonably accessible. So bear with me for a second, I'm going to drag that out, and survey about my hospital stay. Nice. It was good. It was all right. Anyway, I'm going to drag that out. get the calf skin out and we'll see what we've got that will work best. Wait. Here's what we'll do. Let's see. It's right here. Also got this. Hmm. Is cherry. Yeah, I think this is it. Okay. Here. This is a Zonta calf skin I got from Rushton. Apparently that's a tannery in Spain. I maintain that that is a made-up name. Couple good colored browns in here. I think this will probably do just fine. This is about the right thickness that I want. Nice and dense. I want to use this hatch grain because that there is better saved for something where you can see. But the feel of this, the density and the thickness of it is right where I want it to be. So when you reach in, you're putting stuff in and out or sliding things in and out, it's going to be nice and smooth. And it will give a good structure as well to the parts that are actually going to hold tension. Here. Not going to be excessively thick. There's no way. I don't buy it. I don't buy it, Rushton. Zonta. It's impossible. Who would name it that? Piece is actually a little thick, but workable. I'm going to go ahead. Now this piece, this here is actually a template for this piece. This is actually the whole size of what that needs to be. We actually need to have a backing that is this size rather than this size. Cut that. There's there. Oh, it's not because you're hungover. It is gorgeous. It is beautiful stuff. The argument could be made that it is kind of criminal to use it for a liner, but like I said, the density and the structural strength of it is really more what I'm going for than anything else. And also the fact that it's such a smooth finish will be nice to use. And I have a lot of it. So when I have a lot of something, that usually means it's time to use it for things that nobody ever sees. I'm going to take this back, and I'm going to skive the edges of this. Let's run this little strip through the bell skiver and see how that looks. That's the camera again. All right. That got it down, again, almost paper thin. We don't want to go that thin. This is something that has to be holding tension. That's about right. So you can see the outside edge, but here once we skive it, it's going to be very obvious where the skive is. There we go. Perfect. Perfect. There you can see we've got down into the white, the dermis there. Nice and thin at the edges. Semi quite good. All right, very good. Take our oh, I'm not. Why am I doing it on this side? Why am I doing it on this side? It's got to be on this side. Thinking here. Used to using this on the exterior rather than the liner. Close to that edge there. Go. One thing I need to do show you here. I need to mark the final top edge of this and mark the final dimensions for it. Try to keep that very, very narrow. I still want to clean that edge up a little bit. I want to trim that flush with my liner. I'm just going to bring it back about 1 millimeter. The really important thing I need to mark, actually that, right there, is I want to trim little wings in there so that the top piece, I put it so that this piece can recess down right on the top of it and be flush. Eyeball that should be enough. There. Yeah, there are not a lot of people who do this stuff. Don't know of a lot of other guys doing full alligator anything. I did it as an experiment and found that I actually quite liked it. Had even had some aptitude for it, so kind of come to. I feel like I have made something of a name for myself with doing this, as much as I do it. Doesn't need to be too pretty. It needs to be a little bit thinner. There is a terrific degree of risk involved in it. Let's see if I have it here. See if I can find it. Yeah, on those nice summer wallets I was making, this was going to be the outer card slot on the blue one. As you can see, that happened. So it is risky. Things go wrong far more frequently doing this than they do, just doing something normal. Go with those lines there. So now we can see the structure of what this piece is going to be. It's going to be like that. We're gonna marks for our glue. There's about half a dozen sparrows sitting on my feeder right now, just having a having a fight. This back edge is so thin it almost gives no resistance to the pen. So you can see exactly how, pretty much exactly how our template says we should be. This one here, because the gentleman sent me the Alligator already, there's no material cost for him. I just charged him my labor. Generally, my labor for something like this will be around anywhere from, depending on the piece, 500 to 800 or higher for something like that. Just because of it's not as much how much time it takes me. It certainly is time consuming, as you could see, but the other thing is the risk involved, especially if it's my piece of Alligator, my loss. If it in this case is his piece of Alligator, mine and his loss, because then if I screw it up, I have to compensate him for whatever I screw up. And then also the just the sheer ability of being able to do it. There are, like I said, I don't think there are a lot of people who do this, so that degree of I hate to use the term skill when describing myself, but that knowledge of doing it carries its own price. So these, I'm still learning how to price these. I sold my first ever one I did like this. It was a full Alligator pocket organizer. I sold it for $500, and that was with my own material cost as well. So I kind of basically gave that one away. But I'm still learning how to price these. I think I'm pretty accurate for where I'm at right now. But all things are subject to change, of course. All right. Everybody's favorite. It's time to glue. Gluing paddle. One interesting thing to note about this calfskin is it's very dry. It sucks up glue very quickly. So I usually have to do 2 layers of glue to really get it to have a good bond there. Very thirsty leather. And for you first timers here, you will note I'm very generous with glue. There's really no reason not to be. And taking our marks that we made earlier, we're going to line that up there. Now, the only reason not to be generous with glue is, again, I am unfortunately rather messy. Working from the inside out, I'm going to take my glass slicker and press this down. Because with so much glue, it is basically floating on a bed of liquid right now. So you want to be careful how and where you apply pressure. Look at me. Got glue on my fingertips and making a fool of myself. Okay, that all comes off with the final cleaning and polish. Again, because we cleaned it and shined it up and polished it earlier, makes it that much more difficult for the glue to even stick to that surface, which has already come off. But I'm just going to keep working this down, moving the glass slicker back and forth. And once I have it pretty well secured, I'm going to take my fingers and just kind of work around the edges there. There's our first actual piece of this. Kind of see how that's going to lay across it there. Now there's some fine adjustment needed for this. Let me get the white background out to show you. Again, when doing this, the pattern alignment is everything. More than anything else, these considerations are done with aligning the pattern. We're going to take a look. I'm going to line this up with how I had my markings done originally, so you can see these lines are lined up here. But you'll note when I do this, that's pretty good, but you can see by looking at it, it would be better if this was just a little bit higher. That's part of why I give myself so much extra margin around this. I have about a 1/16 to almost an eighth of an inch of free movement left and right that I can use to adjust this and adjust the position of how these scale lines interact with one another. So if I were to say take it this way now, and of course with doing that I will have to adjust this line a little bit because we'll be moving that some, but that's not a big deal. Not a terrific thing there. So we moved it only about a 1/16 of an inch, very little there. But I think that looks like cash money to me right there. Now, like I said, you're not going to get every line to align properly. It's just impossible with the way these are done. But we've got dead on there, very, very close there. And we only start to lose it when we get down there, but it actually picks it back up down there at the bottom. So I think that's going to be how we do it. We'll have to, like I said, we'll have to trim this a little bit. That'll be a little bit of a play required with that. But in my opinion, well worth that little bit of effort. You can see a little bit there what I'm talking about. When I move this up, I have to retrim this curve. So that curve will become a little bit wider, but not enough to really be noticeable. I think the benefit of it is evident. What I'm I am going to take my polish. I'm going to polish away this line so when I make a new line, the only one that's there. While I have the polish out, I might as well hit this one just to pick up any loose glue that might have landed there. Oh, I like that. Polished away that line. This way I can make a new one without really having any confusion about which one I'm going to be working with. I'm going to take this and lay it right there. Mark right up against the line that's the piece I'm aligning it to. Nothing really complicated about it, just little things here. And we can take it and take our template. That. Very evident how much I need to trim from this. I think I'll do that after I glue it to the liner. That's going to be the new dimension of that. While we're letting that marker set up, take this, we're going to get the liner prepared for this piece. And back to the bell skiver. There. That's where we've skived that up. How thick is that going to be? It's actually going to be a little thicker than I want it to be. I think I might actually take this and split it a little bit. Let's go back to the skiver. Cut a test piece here real quick. I'm going to split this whole piece down a little bit, just because this piece is going to hold cards in it. It's going to be something that has a fair bit of tension in it and needs to be the right dimension, so I want to make sure that I'm not shooting myself in the foot and making something that's too thick to properly hold what it needs to. Now, if this split is not 100% perfect, that's not going to matter, because it's going to be, again, behind the Alligator. So any minor differences in elevation are going to be hidden by the scales. As you can see, I've got a little bit of some pieces trapped in there coming up through the feed roller. Clean that up a little bit. That should be sufficient. There we go. I went back and split that. Now again, you can see it's not a perfect split, but underneath this, that isn't going to be something that matters. It's more important to have that thinned down to the point where it's not going to interfere with what we're doing. Okay. Guide there for go. Something like this where I'm going to be working with glue all the way out the edges here, which I am. Fair bit of glue, nonetheless. I'm going to put a piece of wax paper down. I guess it's worth showing here too. We'll come back to this real quick. If you're splitting on the bell skiver and you have these ridges here, you can go back and clean them up afterwards. These ones here are so small as to really not even be caught by the knife. But you can take your skiving knife and go back and zip over it and lift those off. Like these ones here are thin enough to where they're visible only because of the color difference. The knife isn't really even grabbing them. All right. Got our damp paper towel at the ready. Clean up any glue messes. Get a good bit of paste on there. Again, like I said, this glue likes to, rather this leather likes to soak up glue very quickly. So I'm putting a lot on here. I know that no matter how much I put on here, it's probably going to dry up before I can actually lay anything down. It's just giving me a chance to get it spread out there. Working out to the edges, this is where things get messy. That's why we've got the wax paper there. Again, if we get any glue on the other surface of this is just a liner. It'll just wipe right off. Nothing you're ever going to see anyway. We do want this to be very, very secure. I think that should be enough. Should be able to have something happen there. Good. Can also do want to really press on this. Slicker, we can do it from the back. You don't want to press too much on this because it being so shiny, if God forbid you do leave any marks, they will be immediately noticeable. So soft me, I'm using the Sewa water-based glue. I generally do not need to let these sit for more than about 30 to 60 seconds. Look at my edges. I'm going to test my edges. On it there. I need a little bit more in the corner there. Some in there. Oh. Same thing over here. Okay. Here we go. Double check against our template here. Clean of a line on there as possible. Let that set up. While that's drying, while that marker's drying, come back to this one. Remember, I marked the top of my edge here. Trim away, I might as well get that done. Check, make sure, before we cut anything, make sure everything's right. Yep, those are the right dimensions, everything's lined up. Okay. Actually, I'm going to take a precaution here. Don't normally have to do this, but on something irrevocable as this, I'm going to tape it down to the bench. Get a different ruler. Something that I can kind of flex on each side, help tension it down. Not worried about making that in one cut. Just gotta let the knife do its thing. That looks good. There's our nice piece there. Actually, that creased and painted. Getting there. Getting there. That's ready to be cut. Which is not going to be fun, but it is what it is. Nothing to do it but to do it. I'll tell you what I can do, actually. And clean that top up. Before I cut that curve, I'm just going to clean the top edge off. A nice straight index point there. Double check and make sure. Is that correct? Is. Okay. Right. Now, doing that with multiple shallow cuts, we don't get as clean of an edge as you might otherwise with a single cut, but not to worry. 2 reasons why not. Number 1, we're going to crease this edge. That will heat it up and smooth it out a little bit, and then we will also be painting it too. So any little fine differences, things like that, elevation differences in the edge, all of that will kind of come out in the wash after the creasing and the painting. This leather being so dense, it also responds very well to just sanding. So we can actually hit this edge with a sanding block and clean it up a little bit more before we crease it. Kind of round out those smooth using the curved end of this here. Jay, on something like this, I'll usually I put in a new one today, and after this one, I'll put in another one. But generally, I can get 2 projects out of one blade. You know, switching sides there. On the Alligator one like this, I'll usually just use 1 blade for it, just because the Alligator dulls the blade so much. Now we can get a look at how this is supposed to be. Oh yeah, I like that. That is about as good as it gets, my friend. I'm happy with that. I'm happy. I knew that was going to look good. Just had to make sure I could actually do it. Now that it's done, I'm happy. That is always a dicey proposition getting to that point. Now the fileteuse is nice and warm. We can put some creases on this. Again, like I said, this edge, even after sanding it, it's still a little rough around the edges. A lot of that will come out with the crease. Try to get this to where you can see it. I crease the back side first. Again, this is not something you see, but what this does, the tip I use tends to round the edge out. Again, also, like I mentioned, it's going to smooth any differences with the cut. So I want to do both sides to really get that smoothed and rounded out, looking pretty. So even though you'll never see this crease, it does benefit the overall shape by doing this. Get the top now. A glazed alligator does not crease too well. Or rather, it does, it's just difficult. It takes I usually prefer to do low heat, medium pressure, and multiple passes to get a visible crease out of this. This one actually is responding pretty well to it. When I'm going back to give the final impression, I like to go scale by scale. Really working that line in. How that looks. Yeah, you can see it. Hello, Oral. Vadim, forgive me, I don't speak language, but I'm assuming that was something nice. There's a handshake and a fellow blowing a party favor, so I'm assuming that was something good. Thank you. Go ahead and do this other one. I think what we'll do, I think I'm going to crease this other one. We'll put them together and see how they look, just as a test fit. And then I think I'm going to call it a day. So any questions about what we did here, I'd say now would be a good time to ask, so I have time to respond to them. And again, if you haven't yet, please do, if you enjoyed this, if you found it beneficial, please do drop a like on this video. It does, they say it helps, I guess. I'm trying to get back into my routine of streaming every Monday. I've been fairly busy the past couple weeks, so it's been difficult to find the time for it, but I'm trying my best to get back to it. That looks good. Now let's take a look at how these look together with the crease on there. I think that should look pretty darn good. Oop, hang on now. There we go. That looks nice. Very, very happy with how that scale pattern turned out. Like I said, if you're looking to try this kind of thing, that's the biggest thing to pay attention to, is where your scales are, how they line up, how they look together, because that's what makes or breaks these. I'm happy with that. Once this edge gets painted, that'll look very, very, very nice. And again, on our backside here, we have our nice finished interior. Now there's going to be 2 stitches running through here that separate the 2 card slots, so there will be stitches on the backside, but if we'd have had a larger piece of alligator going here, I would have said we could have stitched through that and then glued to the liner, but with what we had to work with, I think this is a good compromise for that. I think getting that scale pattern is going to be worth having some stitches on the back side there that you'll never actually see. I'm happy with that. Let's do a test with everything. Did I put... Here somewhere. Where did I put it? Here it is. Here's our interior panel there. That's how we can expect that to look. I'd say we nailed it. Once the edges are creased and painted and there's no more light edges showing there, no more rough edges, that's going to look just right. Then, of course, there will be the exterior, all in Alligator, but that is cash money right there, my friend. That makes me happy. I like how that looks. That was harrowing, I'm not going to lie. That's, I've never done that before live. So, I'm glad everything turned out the way it did. Very happy with that. I thank you all for joining me. I don't see any questions in the chat, so I'm assuming everybody had them answered to their satisfaction. If you do have questions, feel free to drop me a line either through YouTube, email, or Instagram. Or if you're in the Leatherworking Discord, you can get me in there. Those of you who know where to find me, you know where to find me. But I think we're going to call it a day there. That's a good 2-hour stream. That was a harrowing experience, at least for me. Maybe it was for you too. But I'm glad I had the company. I appreciate it. Sometimes when you're doing that, the only thing you can do is talk yourself through it and hope for the best. In this case, everything turned out just right. So that's how we want it. I will see you guys around. Again, if you have any questions, do feel free to reach out to me. But other than that, I hope to see you here next week. Have a good day, and thanks for the company.